Hi, my name's Todd Peterson. I'm on the team here at One Identity, and today we're going to talk about governance. So governance is something that's been around for a while. It has a lot of different definitions. I'm going to talk about it as it relates to identity and access management. So first off, what actually is governance? As far as identity and access management is concerned, it's making sure that the right people have the right access to the right resources, all the right resources, at the right time, in all the ways that they want and need that access, and that all the other right people can say that it is right. They can prove that it is right. That's what governance in identity and access management is. So there's a few components to governance. Most people, when you hear the word governance and identity and access management, think all it is attestations. Those periodic reviews where somebody goes through and says, I will attest that every person that works for me has the correct access to all the applications they need, etc. That's definitely a big part of it. That's kind of the hardest part of it. But there's other components of governance that, if done correctly, will make that attestation piece much, much easier. The first would be the ability for line of business and end users to make requests for that access. And then that leads to fulfillment, or what's often called provisioning of that access. Everything that has to happen in order for the accounts, the rights, the group memberships, etc., to be set up across the whole organization. So if your request is done well, if your provisioning is done well, then your attestation happens well, and you have achieved a state of governance. I like to think of governance as the pinnacle of a hierarchy. If you have governance at the top and you have basic access at the bottom, and then things like management, security, control, on the middle layers, you can't get to the top layer of a hierarchy without satisfying the bottom layers. So if your access is messed up, if your security is messed up, if you don't have control, if management is too difficult, you'll never achieve governance. And that's the goal we all have, is to get to governance. So what should be governed? As I mentioned earlier, usually governance is about an end user with access to stuff, their applications, their network, stuff in the cloud, cloud applications, cloud databases, and the on-prem, versions of the same things. That's absolutely a part of it. But also you need to govern all of the unstructured data that may exist as well. So an end user accessing SharePoint, accessing a file share, accessing Dropbox, accessing whatever may exist that has unstructured data. It's very important that that be governed as well, because risk is there as well. So you have end users with access to applications, etc., and access to unstructured data. But that's not all. You also have a whole bunch of privileged users with elevated access to all those applications and all those sources of data. You need to govern those as well. So governance isn't complete unless it covers both the end user, access to on-prem and cloud applications and stuff, as well as on-prem and cloud unstructured data, and the privileged users, the administrators with the access to the same stuff. So why is governance so hard? And we all know the reasons, but let's quickly review. First off is complexity. As you grow, as new systems and applications come online, as you add cloud things, as you acquire a company and add another population of users and another network, things become more complex. That means it's harder to do what you need to do. Manual processes. Often we have automated tools to do some aspects of governance on some systems, but we don't have them for everything. So you have a manual process for provisioning and for attestation and for request and fulfillment, on other systems. So any manual process is going to slow things down and introduce more problems, more incidents of error. That means you've got inconsistency. You've got some areas that happen well, you've got other areas that don't happen well. And finally, you have the question of ownership. Who actually knows the information and can do the work to set up these accounts? Usually it's IT. But who knows how it should happen or why it should happen? That would be the line of business. It's a little bit of a conflict there. So here's how governance would normally work in most of our situations. You have a request process. Some new guy gets hired or he switches jobs. His manager is going to send emails and fill out forms to a number of IT people. Those IT people are going to go in and do the best they can to set up the accounts. And probably what they're doing is saying set up Bill's account like Joe, because they have the same job. But there's no guarantee that Joe's access is actually the right access, so that means Bill's going to get something wrong. And then when it comes time for attestation, the line of business guy is going to communicate back to all those IT people that had to do all the work to set everything up and say, what access do my people have? So they're going to run a report, they're going to give it to him, he's going to look at it and say, well, I don't know what this means, and he's going to do what's called a blind attestation. He's going to say, I hope it's right, it's probably right, and he's going to just sign off on it. And that process repeats over and over again. So this little thing I've drawn here, imagine that for every application you have separately, every user type you have separately. So you've got these happening in pockets everywhere, this kind of disjointed governance approach. So the problems are, you've got a lot of inefficiency. It takes a lot of time to do any of this stuff. You don't do it consistently across the board, and you have disgruntled users. How often have you hired a new person and it's taken weeks or even a month to get them access to everything they need? How much IT involvement is there, etc. You've got blind attestation, as I mentioned earlier. You have the line of business hoping that it's right, but really no way to actually prove that it's right. And IT isn't equipped to say what is right. They can only say what is. You have a risk of a security failing because of this blind attestation, because of the delays, because of the inconsistencies. There's a lot of areas where a bad guy could exploit your weaknesses that you don't even know are there. And that makes compliance and satisfying regulations very, very difficult. Every regulation is asking you to be in a governed state, but you can't prove that you're actually in a governed state if you can't get these things right. So governance is really, really difficult, but it doesn't have to be that way. How can you do governance in a way that's going to actually overcome all these problems? Let me tell you. So how governance should be, it should be configurable and universal. That means that rather than custom building the request and the provisioning and the attestation for every system, you should have something in place that allows you to just configure it. That means that you can address change quicker, you can deal with whatever happens in a much more nimble, much more agile way. You can have lots of automation and orchestration. That means that the things that are normally taking manual processes and have errors possible, have long delays, happen automatically, consistently, without any problems. You have a single source of the truth. Rather than defining what a user should be in system A, and then in system B, and then in system C, and then changing it in each system as things change, what if you had a single source of the truth that said a user is defined as X, and that applies across the board? That would be a big deal. And you put the line of business in charge. They're the ones who know who should have access to what, and what that access should be, rather than IT that simply knows how to set up that access. So if you can have configurable, automated, single source of the truth, and the line of business in charge, you can actually get to that governed state you're after. So let's talk about how that would work. So in this unified governance approach, which we offer here at One Identity, you make a request, a single request, in a automated shopping cart type scenario. The guy hires somebody, line of business guy says, I just hired a person in job X, here is a job X, and that automatically sends out all the requests that need to be sent out. Fulfillment or provisioning is very easy. IT doesn't have to get involved. The system automatically will say, I'm going to set up this new user's rights in system A exactly the way they should be, in system B like they should be, etc., etc. That means when it's time to do an attestation, because it was set up right from the start, the line of business was kind of driving the boat, everything is attestable in a much easier way. So the line of business can actually do the attestation. And that then covers everything. Remember on the previous slide, we had all these pockets of doing the governance activities. Now a single governance activity covers everything that you need, including your unstructured data, including your privileged access. So the results of doing it this way is you can quickly react to change. Something changes, it's just a simple reconfiguration. It's just a simple addition, or it happens automatically. You don't have to worry about it. Everything is much more efficient. We have numerous customers that were taking days, weeks, or months to fully provision somebody that can now have virtually instant provisioning and accurate provisioning. Everything's accurate and consistent. You don't no longer have to worry about, does Bill and Joe having the same access actually mean that they have the right access? You know it's right. There's not room for human error. And you are able to achieve your objectives. So no longer does these day-to-day tasks of setting up, managing, turning off access get in the way of what you're actually in business to do. You can achieve your objectives without security being the problem. So this is only available through a end-to-end, unified, holistic provisioning solution, such as what you get from One Identity. So if governance is something that's a challenge for you, I invite you to visit us on the web. You can watch videos, you can play with the software, you can read case studies, we've got white papers, everything you may need to learn how this can actually benefit you and your organization. If you'd like to learn more, visit us on the web at oneidentity.com/identity-manager. Thanks.